Hey guys, it's Emmy's season. Yes, I'm here on Sunset Boulevard, the Director Guild of America, for the Q&A with actors and actresses for most of your favorite TV series. Enjoy this video.
Okay, if you haven't seen it, you have to see this. We're going to talk about it right now. Without further ado, let me introduce producer Matt Parker. And producer Annabelle Dunn. And as Lieutenant Commander Philip Quigg, Kiefer Sutherland.
Yeah!
Welcome, and thanks for coming to Contenders, guys. This is, I saw that this played the Venice Film Festival, which is very exciting, and I actually got to review it for Deadline and saw it then. I was blown away. It was not quite what I expected, because I'd seen the Caine Mutiny 1954 movie, which opened up. This is actually from a play that they did, and it's a real courtroom drama. And before we talk about it, how it came about, and of course the late, great William Friedkin, this is his final film, and what a way to go out, I have to say, is extraordinary. But we're going to show a clip to give you an idea for those who haven't seen it. And so take a look at the screen here, the Caine Mutiny Court-Martial. We're forcing you to look this close, Kiefer.
No, I didn't. I didn't look up at all. But hearing it, we shot this. We didn't shoot it like a play, but I certainly had to learn the dialogue like a play. The schedule was only 2 weeks to make this film. I shot the first testimony in 2 parts because of a blocking issue, and we shot the second testimony, entrance to exit, in 1 take.
And it was like 28 minutes?
28 minutes, and it was seven cameras, which I can go on about kind of the artistry of William Friedkin. You see what the camera sees, but what I'm looking at are 7 cameras all in motion at the same time. And it was like looking into the innards of a Swiss watch. And it was perfect, and it was like a ballet, and so easily can you be distracted, but not one grip accidentally bumped into a focus puller, not one camera was ever blocked by another camera. It was seamless, and the mind that can create that kind of camera blocking is obviously one of the great directors of all time, and that was William Friedkin.
Yeah, well, The French Connection, The Exorcist, Sorcerer, To Live and Die in LA, on and on and on. And when you talk about all those cameras, he really is a master of knowing where to put the camera, when to put it. That really helps the actor's performance.
Well, it helps immensely, and you might not always be aware of what he's doing. For instance, I was not as aware when we were making the film as I was certainly when I saw it, that the first testimony, the cameras and the lenses he chose were much closer. And the second testimony, the cameras were back a little farther, and all to create the illusion that I'm getting smaller in the chair. And so he's incredibly helpful. I certainly worked on physicality to try and accomplish the same thing. But he was using his cameras not just as a way to kind of show you an image, but he's actually contributing to the storytelling by where he's putting the cameras and how he's using those lenses.
And so what happened? How did you get cast in this? He called you up and out of the blue and said, I want you to play a role that Humphrey Bogart made famous?
No, but it was kind of fantastic. It was very, very old school. There were no agents involved, there were no managers involved, and yes, he did just call me up. And just to let you know why this story would kind of funny, is William Friedkin was responsible for me. I was working as a theater actor. I was only 15, 16 years old in Toronto, Canada. My mother was a great theater actor. It's the community I grew up in, and I was very dedicated to that was the actor that I wanted to be. And I went and saw The French Connection when I was 15. I didn't know anything about the film. And my response to it was so visceral, and the film was so honest and aggressive. And then obviously performances of Roy Scheider and Gene Hackman would have affected any young actor. And I left that theater that day knowing that I wanted to make films. I wanted to make films like that. And it had a profound change in my life. To Live and Die in LA, you mentioned, was another film that was one of my favorites. And so I've respected this man incredibly. And so I get a phone call one day, and I don't recognize the number, but I answer it anyways. And it's this guy on the other end says, "Hi, my name's William Friedkin, and I would like to talk to you about," and I hung up. and I thought it was one of my friends making a joke. And then about 2 minutes go by, and I'm like, that doesn't sound like any of my friends. And then about 2 more minutes go by, and I'm like, my friends aren't that smart. Oh, shit. And I called the number back, and he was laughing on the other end. He said, I didn't think you'd call back this fast. And then he was generous enough to ask me to do this film, and I was absolutely honored.
Cast ensemble overall, that was Jason Clarke interrogating you, and that was Jake Lacey, and on. Talk about how you brought them all together to do this in such a short amount of time, too.
Well, that's easy. It was all our casting director, our fabulous casting director, Denise Chamian, who, like, I'd never worked with a casting director like her, and she was able to get anybody on the phone that we wanted and give us options, kind of, that she pulled out of the woodwork, and it was really amazing to work with her and watch her work.
Before in any other version, and did you watch the original? What kind of research might you have done into this?
I was really familiar with the original, and I think it's one of Humphrey Bogart's greatest performances. It's quite down the line in his career, and I think it's one of his most subtle performances. And I love that movie. I love that film. Obviously, conversations with Mr. Friedkin were kind of the origin of where I would start to kind of discover the character. For me, and I was just kind of aware of two things that happen when you get older, and it kind of really affected the way I would read the material. And these two kind of really not great moments in one's life kind of collide here in public in this trial. And the first one is that kind of terrible moment when you realize that you're not necessarily the man you want to be, and you have to reconcile with that and discover who you really are, the man you really are. And hopefully the separation between who you wanted to be all your life and who you really are is not that far. Unfortunately for Commander Queeg, it's a very large divide that he has to reconcile in the context of this film. And the other is kind of realizing, very sadly at some point, that you're less relevant than you once were. The Navy needed him 20 years ago. They don't need him very much now. And he's discovering these two moments, very difficult moments, and reconciling with these two very difficult ideas in the middle of this trial. And you watch this man get broken. And that's very sad, and handle the truth speech. And I looked around, and so many other actors from other films had come on set for that day as well. And Mr. Nicholson just knocked it out of the park in one take. And I remember Rob Reiner kind of not knowing what to do, and he walked up to Jack Nicholson and said, "Do you mind doing that one more time?" He said, "Well, we're here." And Mr. Nicholson did it again, and Rob Reiner went, "Well, I guess we're wrapped." I don't know what else to do. And everyone went home early. So it's, I think,
I want to introduce three people very much responsible for it here. First off, he is the executive producer, creator, writer, and showrunner, Ron Nieswaner. And here we have Jonathan Bailey as Tim, and Matt Bomer. And, all right, well, congratulations on Fellow Travelers. You saw the reaction when I said how many have seen it, and, you know, fandom out here for this show. They're very excited. Let me ask you, Ron, in 1 second, though. I do want to show a clip, but I want to find out why you decided now was the time to adapt this book and get this on the screen, because it's very relevant. Also, we were talking about the relevance of Caine Mutiny. this one is especially important, I think, at this time. So let's take a look at Fellow Traveler right here. Congratulations, Matt. You were nominated for the SAG Award and the Golden Globe for this so far. And so was the movie, but the limited series, and it won the GLAAD Media Award also. It's well-deserved. Ron, why now? Why did you want to adapt this, bring this to a much larger audience than maybe even the book reached?
Sure, you know, Pete, I read the book actually 11 years ago and fell in love with Hawk and Tim, and you can see why, and you can see why. But of course, as we got close to making it, you know, the relevance of what was happening in our country, you know, in the 1950s is it's very apparent. You know, there is a potential demagogue who might be in charge of our country in a few months. And if you want to know something about that demagogue, his mentor, Roy Cohn, is a major character in Fellow Travelers. And the destruction of lives, of thousands of lives, with the power that McCarthy and Cohn had, and McCarthy wasn't even the president. You know, that's a demonstration of what might happen if we don't protect our fragile democracy. And even though Fellow Travelers is first and foremost a love story, it's a powerful, sexy, brilliantly performed love story. And I believe love always triumphs. You know, that's the first thing that we have to hold on to. But sometimes we need more than love to triumph. We need to take action. And
The Apprentice, which is about the young Donald Trump and his relationship with Cohn. So this is the year of Cohn in a weird way on big screen and small screen. Interesting. Let me ask you, Matt, you are also an executive producer on this, so you have a say in... Applause for the producer.
You don't have to applaud.
You have a say in it as well, not just as an actor, but and why did you want to do this, and why did you want to be so involved in bringing it to the screen that way?
Well, thank you everybody for being here. First of all, I read the book. Ron brought me the book at the beginning of the pandemic, really, and I read it, and I was so fascinated by the world of the piece. I fell in love with the characters and the story, and I knew Ron was the right person to tell the story, and you know, I just felt like I was a little bit pessimistic as to whether or not it would actually get made, but I was like, I want to put my voice behind this in whatever way I can, and we were just so fortunate. It was one of those projects where you just felt like voices wanted to come through, because we were met with these roadblocks along the way in development, and somehow something would shift and it'd be a green light again, and it was just one of those pieces that you knew was bigger than any one of its parts. So I just wanted to lend my voice and find the right people to work with in all the departments and use whatever relationships I had to just try and get it made.
And this is a very complex, complicated man you're playing, Hawkins. It goes through, this spans the 50s and the McCarthy hearings and politics and all of that, through the 60s of Vietnam, the 70s, and up to the AIDS in the 80s, and it's a lot to throw at here. And he's not always sympathetic, as we saw from that clip. You're breaking this man's heart here, and you know, that's, number one, it's difficult to play and still keep us with you. And so how do you approach that with a character like that?
Well, if you look into his backstory, there's so much intimacy equals the most horrific thing he could ever imagine for this character, given the circumstances of his life leading up to it. But I think he's a renegade and a rogue and an iconoclast. He's someone who's really invented his own code of ethics to survive. And unfortunately, that can be at the cost of love at times. And he has to deal with the pain of not being able to share his closest, like a full 360-degree love with the people he cares about the most. And that's both with Tim and with Lucy, I feel like. He can't.
Wow, I was really impressed with this. You're so good. Of course, you're well known on the British stage, and you know, Bridgerton, and upcoming Wicked, when you see him in Wicked. This is a completely different role that we've seen you do here.
Yeah, I think that's also why it was an undeniable dive in, because after, you know, playing a part in Bridgerton and playing a love story that we have seen in you know, this story between Tim and Hawke hasn't been given this 8 hours of prestige television slot, and it felt particularly punk after Anthony Bridgerton to come and play Tim. And I think that's something that maybe will stay with me through my career, I hope. But just watching it now, even from this weird angle.
That would be a chiropractic appointment.
wasn't to cast two actors who are both out as gay, rather than this is something they talk about in the business now, you know, well, if you're not gay, you can't play a gay or something. I don't necessarily believe that. I think actors should be able to play anything. But here, you felt it was important, and I think both of you did too. So can you talk to that?
Sure. You know, I'd like to just point out, because I'm very proud of it, we actually have 5 gay homosexual characters in Fellow Travelers, and they're played by 5 out LGBTQ actors. And we have 4 executive producers who are all LGBTQ. 2 of our directors are LGBTQ. So, and our characters are not sort of, you know, the gay neighbor, you know, or it's not like we think that character might be gay. They are as in-your-face homosexual as you can possibly be, and I mean in your face literally, or in their faces, I should say. So, you know, that the boldness of the show, I think, has to do with my sort of pent-up frustration of many years of just sort of like saying, I'm not hiding anything anymore. This is who I am, and take it or leave it, folks.
But also, you know, as you were saying, they exist in a world where they can't communicate freely, that everything is robbed of them. So actually their communication comes down to absolute chemical micro shifts and looking for the green light all the time physically, and that's just an amazing thing to be able to play. Because these characters can't otherwise, you know, express themselves, and so when they do come together, they are fighting for love, and they are fighting for that connection, and Tim experiences something that he's never felt, and Hawkins gives him that, and that's something that they then, you know, over the time, I love that the sex in this has a number on the call sheet, really, 69.